Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Bobby Witt Jr. versus Julio Rodiguez, as well as Gunnar Henderson versus Corbin Carroll, and more players. Let's introduce the team today. I'm Scott. We also have Ty, Phil, and Chris. Guys, how are you? You doing well?
Phil had his flu game a few weeks ago, and I'm coming off the end of some other similar or related ailment. So if you see me like go dark for a minute, it's probably because I'm sneezing to the side or something.
Yeah, don't sneeze on the microphone.
I'm happy to be here.
Even though you're sick, Ty, your Lions are on their way to the Super Bowl. Well, one more win to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
they're gonna get there.
So, I'm not holding my breath. I'm celebrating now. We're good, but I'm not holding my breath. So,
well, great. Well, let's just jump into this. The very first topic that I want to discuss with you all. There's a couple players, a lot of young players. As we are looking at them, we always think which one's going to be the one that actually holds value in a few years. It's very reminiscent of Bryce Harper and Mike Trout back in 2012. They were compared as the same player. People were saying Harper will be better, Trout will be better. It went back and forth. And I think now we can say Mike Trout's a better player. You could argue Harper's had a better career. I wouldn't, but you could argue that, and that's cool. But Trout's been the better player. We also have Soto and Acuna. Which one of those guys has been better? It's gone back and forth. And I think we're going to have some debates around some players currently coming up in the big leagues. So let's talk about Bobby Witt Jr. versus Julio Rodiguez. Bobby Witt Jr. plays for the Royals. Julio Rodriguez plays for the Mariners. Neither team look like they're going to have a huge year in 2024. I think the Mariners have more hope currently. But overall, it's all about their single performance, I think, for a lot of fans of those teams. So, Phil, which player between those two are you taking? It can be short, medium, or long-term. I prefer long-term if it's me.
Well, are we taking into account today's prices?
We can. You can. If you want to say, I believe in this player long-term, but based off of pricing, this one's too low. That's totally cool with me.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, for the next year or two, I do like Bobby Witt, who's currently around 60% the cost of J-Rod. So a PSA 10 Bowman Chrome Auto of J-Rod just went for $1,400. Might have been a little bit on the higher side. I don't know if that's considered an outlier, but Bobby Witt is going for closer to like the $750 to $800 range. So, recency bias can lead people to the wrong direction and make incorrect inclusions. But in this case, I actually think it kind of works because although Bobby Witt had a significantly better season from a WAR perspective this year versus his rookie season, where with J-Rod, he kind of just followed it up with something that looked overall stats very similar to his rookie season. I do like some of the skills improvements that Bobby Witt made, but a lot of that was based off of defense. He went from literally the worst shortstop to one of the best shortstops, or the best shortstop in the league. So if you see the way his WAR is broken down, it's sort of split. About half of it comes from offense, half of it comes from defense. J-Rod, more of it's coming from offense, and he's still a pretty good fielder as well. So, and they kind of have like. So you could argue that well, Bobby Witt's got like trajectory because he came from here and then now he's here and maybe then he's like going to be even better next year. I wouldn't say that. I think they both made marginal improvements with things like contact rate, chase rate, walk percentage for Bobby Witt got a little bit better, 4.7 to 5.8. The K rate for Bobby Witt went down from 21% to 17.4%. And I think you saw similar stuff with J-Rod as far as, the walk rate got worse. K rate got a little bit better. But I think contact rate and inside the zone, swinging outside the zone certainly got a little bit better for him. So, I mean, it's kind of tough, but because the prices are so different right now, it's hard for me to ignore that. And I think a lot more is baked in for J-Rod. Clearly the MLB is trying to push him as like the next guy. He's been in the commercials where Bobby Witt has not. Bobby Witt's kind of cool because he's a card collector. I don't know. I think right now they might be a little bit overpriced and there's a lot baked in. I think you could make the argument, well, J-Rod's career WAR is better because he had two really good seasons where Witt's had one really good season. But right now I'm not looking at their cumulative statistics because that's not what's going to drive their prices in the next few years. That's going to matter more 7, 10, 15 years from now. So right now I do like Witt better than J-Rod.
Cool. So what you said, Phil, was important there. All of this could switch so fast with, I don't want to say an injury, but something can switch really quick with performance, injury, all these different things with a young player like these two. I'm actually going to pick Julio Rodriguez, though, myself. Nothing against Bobby Witt. I like his makeup better. I do think he has the it factor. Not saying Bobby Witt doesn't. He's extremely fast, but he has the it factor, and I underestimate the it factor way too much collecting certain players that I collect. And it can be hard to gain ground on players who have the it factor that are comparable. On top of that, Julio is going to be 23 next year versus Witt being 24. It feels like Julio's floor right now is about 5 WAR, and Bobby Witt's floor is closer to 3 WAR, I'd say. He could really struggle defensively year in, year out with shortstops and defensive metrics. They're kind of a crapshoot unless you're proven. So for me, I like Julio. I do think that his nuclear August and September were enough to show, like, yeah, he still has that. It wasn't just like a random fluke his freshman year. He really has that potential. So for me, if I was putting big money into these players, which either way, they're kind of overpriced. There's no way around it. These players are overpriced, especially compared to what you can get. I personally would spend a little bit more on Julio for a comparable card myself. Ty, what are you thinking?
I pretty much agree with that. I think both guys are really interesting. I think they're fairly comparable, but to me, the big difference is that it factor with J-Rod. Like, he just has charisma. He's very exciting. Think about the home run derby performance. Like, he's just got a next level of attraction to a lot of people. I also just think if you look at the teams, people are more inclined to pay a little more attention maybe to Seattle, just the legacy, and with Griffey, and there's kind of just a different buzz about him than there ever will be, I think, with the Royals. I mean, they were obviously good and won a World Series, and it's still like nobody really cared about, other than, Kansas City fans. Obviously winning, we talk a lot about that in baseball, isn't maybe as critical as other sports, hence the maybe debate between Harper and Trout. But I did something interesting. I went on to Market Movers and looked at our intelligence reports feature to see, like, how are these guys comping out ratio wise to each other. The way that the feature works, it compares prices of the same exact card between two players. So you can't, strictly speaking, compare like their Bowman cards because they're from different years, but you can compare their rookie cards. And right now, across all the cards that we have in the database that have sold in the last 14 days, J-Rod's at a 1.5 average multiplier over Bobby Witt. But then what's really interesting to me, and this is where I think there could be opportunities, is to look at outliers. And for example, their SP image variations respectively for each other. Raw, J-Rod's did $143 average over the last 14 days, and Bobby Witt's at 49. So there's a huge difference between the two of them on that particular card. And that's where if I am thinking about players like this and kind of doing an either or and looking at price opportunity, I start trying to zoom in on specific cards where I think there's some kind of like unreasonable price gap. What's really interesting too is that J-Rod actually has maybe this is why the Raws are actually outselling them. His gem rate looks to be much higher. He's got almost 1,300 PSA 10s, whereas Bobby Witt's only got 581. So that could be why people are buying them. Maybe there's a centering issue generally with the Witt or something. But I think between the two, they're probably both a little bit overpriced right now. I'm not actually looking to pick up either of these guys at the moment. I'll wait and see kind of what happens this year, and knowing that there's a bunch more exciting players coming up. See what kind of staying power they have over the next year or so.
Ty, you're right. Like, realistically, these players could fall out of the limelight real fast. And we actually saw Julio kind of do it last year. If he has another slow start, we did this with Juan Soto, and there were buying opportunities relative to what Soto pricing was, right, when he did slow down. There's a good chance it happens again. And with the rookie class coming up, with Jackson Holiday, with all these players, it really can push them down a bit. It can suppress everybody from 2018 even. So it'll be interesting.
Just a quick comment there. I think some of the reason, maybe not all, with that price discrepancy you mentioned, Ty, with the Series 2 card, is I don't think a lot of people like that Bobby Witt pose. And I think it would also hurt the logo fractor. So you might see something similar between the ratios there, where it would be well over the 1.5.
Yeah, that could be very well. Although I don't love the image on either of them terribly in this case, but that might be part of the reason why.
I don't love the Julio anymore because it's photoshopped. It's like a different league.
Yeah, it's like from like a hang. It's a horizontal card. One of the things about that ratio that really surprised me is how everyone hated that Julio card when it first came out. It's this weird horizontal card. I think the Witt's vertical, at least. I know the Torkelson was horizontal, I think, too. But I remember people just absolutely hated that Julio card when it first came out. So I am surprised to see the price holding up that high. if a Raw's going for 140, what's a PSA 10 going for if there are 1,300 of them? That seems like a lot.
The what you're talking about, the image variation, the PSA 10s are at last sold for 282, about 257 over the last 90.
So it's like a 2 times a Raw. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Can we also just say, isn't it kind of crazy how much we've moved on from, like, the bat down Acuna? Remember how hot that card was? No one talks about it or really cares about it anymore. It's crazy how much it's changed even just in the last few years. But I do think the print runs are scaring people away. You say 1,300 PSA 10s, Chris?
That's what
That's
what
pretty
Tupac said about the Julio. I think the Acuna is well over 1,000 PSA 10s now for the bat down.
Like at this point of those two players, what are you buying? Just Bowman Chrome autographs and what? Like, I know you love Stadium Club. Is that what you would target? Like, what are you, if you had to invest in these players, what cards are you investing in? Because there's so many options.
You're right. So I would say either a Bowman Chrome auto or they're both in the best Sapphire set I think we've seen in a while. So if you're going to get a rookie auto for either of those guys, pony up the money and get the Sapphire update auto. I think there's 41 of each player. They're all numbered. They're all on card. And that's easily their best rookie autos, like far and away. They're going to be expensive. You got to pay for them. But I mean, those are by far their best rookie autos.
A lot in raw condition will have issues with like the surface. You just have to be careful if you buy raw. But I mean, those are beautiful cards. But for me, because there's so many chrome brands, I tend to go for like Topps Heritage Red Ink, Topps Heritage Black, Gold, if you can find one, number to 5. I tend to, for like the guys that debuted after like 2020 or 2019, I tend to go for a Heritage a lot because at least they haven't messed with a brand too much for like the high end parallels and stuff.
There's
only one Heritage.
Ton of Heritage collectors still out there.
That Bobby Witt is fantastic, by the way. Only
this is
31.
This is I was just pulling this up. His other Stadium Club images are kind of lame, but this one's great.
That one's great, and they're all that image is only on the image with autos is only on the 91 design variation.
Yeah,
it's like
for anybody listening, it's just kind of him in the dugout getting the high fives, auto,
smiling,
very cool, smiling. Good image for sure.
But yeah, so Julio's Topps Chrome rookie auto is horizontal as well, and it's also photoshopped. So I don't know, that card just doesn't do much for me. Even the gold ones, like the image is just kind of crappy, quite frankly. So I don't love it. His update Chrome auto is a sticker. So I mean, with Julio, I can start crossing off cards I don't want. I would say the red ink would be.
What do you think of the logo fractor? The logo fractor and logo fractor autograph. What are your thoughts on that set? That set was speculated on heavily. I made videos on that, so maybe I partially was the reason for it. I hope I wasn't, but that card
red ink over logo fractor just because it's been around for longer.
Okay, I agree with that.
It's a little juiced up, like. That sells for probably like 5x Bobby Witt or like 4x. It doesn't make any sense. So I think there's some manipulation going on with that logo fractor card. I know they only printed 250-ish. Is that what it was? But that's still kind of high for today's standards for like non-serialized cards. Like that's not ideal. But I mean, it's a beautiful card, but yeah, I'm not.
You can compare
not that logo fractor stuff. And does he have an autograph? Did you say he did?
I thought he did. I could have been mistaken the X Fractor from Topps Chrome update. I could have been mistaken. But honestly, that card's very comparable as well to the Acuna Sapphire, and that card's not moved. It's just sat there for years. So maybe there's not much room there at this point.
Over 100 PSA 10s on that Acuna, so it's hard for it to get any real momentum up.
Yep.
So I do want to talk about a little bit more stats real quick and look at their offensive profiles. There's a couple of things I like and dislike about each player, right? So obviously Julio's going to chase, swing, strike out a ton. If you're listening on Spotify, it's just very low on a lot of his, plate discipline at the plate, but he has great average exit velocity, great hard hit percentage. If you look at his values, it summarizes batting, base running, and fielding all in the 90th percentile or higher, which is great. And his expected stats outperformed his realized stats. And I actually have beef with people leveraging that and thinking it's going to lead somewhere. Pay attention to like what Vlad did. It never has yet. But at the same time, one thing I love about Julio is his spray chart. He's able to have power everywhere. It's part of his offensive profile. If you look at Witt, he is pull heavy. He only had one that you might consider opposite field. It's more center field straight away. But I do love that. But Witt, at the same time, he has more potential, surprisingly, to not strike out a lot, not swing and miss. He also is pretty high. He's 100th percentile base running, 94th in fielding, but his batting is lower. Even though their OPS, everything is similar, they do kind of like, here's like their OPS is really close. OPS plus is close. But according to Fangraphs, Julio ranked out significantly higher for like what the quality of contact was.
So his ballpark kills him.
It does. It does kill him. I haven't looked at his home road splits, but I'm guessing it would tell a story. I think we need to jump to the next player. It's already 15 minutes in, and we've only talked about these two. But let's jump to the splits real quick and see. Any thoughts that you guys want to discuss from those while I pull this up? Feel free.
I think the WRC plus and OPS plus advantage that J-Rod has over Witt, because I've been like looking at their stats, their slash lines, and I'm like, okay, yeah, like J-Rod has him by like 10 points ish in like on base percentage. I think it does come down to that ballpark. Yeah, I think that adjustment gives J-Rod that boost, so it doesn't screw him too much.
Also with J-Rod, I think I don't know what this list is, but his hardware is impressive. He has played 2 seasons. He's got 2 All-Stars, 2 Silver Sluggers, a Rookie of the Year, and 2 top 10 MVP finishes.
Yeah, that's impressive.
That's a pretty exclusive club, I would think, that he's in.
Yeah. So you're right, though, Chris. 785 OPS at home, 850 on the road for last year. 14 versus 18 home runs, not a lot there. RBI similar, loses about 20 points of batting average. But overall, his ballpark hurts him. But like Phil mentioned, ballpark factors can help with league-adjusted stats. They also can hurt players. Look at Nolan Arenado in like the 2010s to have a 950 OPS and a 120 OPS plus. So it is what it is. But yeah, so that's the first hypothetical. So one word, who are you taking? I'm taking Julio. Ty.
J-Rod.
Chris.
I'm taking J-Rod long-term, but I'm not necessarily buying anything right now. I think there's too much. Like
that's a good answer.
I think we all agree there's a lot baked into his prices. So there will come a time where there's a sort of a resettling of his prices, and then I will probably look to buy something.
I think if anybody asked us, would you invest in these players right now? I think we'd all say no. Like pure invest, right? Like people ask. But Phil, who would you take? You take Witt right now?
Well, when I said Witt, I said over the next couple of years. I think long term, the prices today don't matter as much. Sure. If I'm paying a little bit more for J-Rod. Long term, I agree. It's J-Rod.
Great. All right. Well, we are all in agreement. So Jeff would have totally picked Witt just because we wanted some different opinions. So
now I'm honestly terrified about Julio right now. That we all agree, that like worries me.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of worry with some of these players. The next one, speaking of worries, I want to talk about Corbin Carroll versus Gunnar Henderson. Both won Rookie of the Year this last year, I think unanimously, if I'm not mistaken, or pretty close unanimously for Henderson. But overall, which player do you believe in the long term? Corbin Carroll's a speedster, probably a better bat last year. Actually, not probably. He had a better bat last year, but even though he's the fastest player in baseball, second to Ellie De La Cruz, he cannot field the baseball. He was terrible in the outfield, and his arm is a noodle. And then we have Gunnar Henderson, who is actually able to play relatively elite defense at shortstop and third base. And his offensive profile came along as the year went on for sure, but people are projecting him to be like the next big deal. So Chris, who are you taking between those two? You could do now and the long term, because now is an interesting story with their pricing.
Yeah, if we're talking about fantasy baseball, Corbin Carroll all the way. But if we're talking about like a player to buy their cards of, Gunnar Henderson to me definitely is the guy of those two that I want. That team is up and coming. They look like they could contend for the next decade, and he is going to be right in the middle of that. His defense is good. His offense looks good. I like him a lot, but I don't know. I'm still kind of scared about where his prices are currently. So I'm not actively buying him, but I do like him. I'll take him over Corbin Carroll.
Yeah, I don't want to take Phil's thunder because he's going to say the same thing as me. Phil, what is your thoughts on those two?
So I was one of the earlier guys on Carroll. Certainly before he debuted, I was in on him. He was one of my picks last year before the season started, and I think he's a phenomenal player. But the shoulder worries me a little bit. The defense, like Scott mentioned, slowed down a little bit in the second half. Maybe that was related to shoulder, or maybe not. The issue is, guys, that like in this same thing happened to J-Rod. Like you can follow up on a very impressive rookie campaign, and your stuff can still go down because you didn't knock the cover off the ball. You didn't completely exceed expectations that second year. So Carroll's the guy with all the hype. With Henderson, he actually had like a comparable year with regards to like probably Baseball Reference WAR, maybe Fangraphs WAR favors Carroll by quite a bit. But what he did was completely different, where he started really slow. And a lot of people were like, is he going to get sent down? Like, he's hitting like 200, 210. Like, what's going on? Quality of contact's decent, but like, this isn't working, right? And then he turns it on probably starting around June, and he ended up having a pretty decent season. So a lot of people, even though he won Rookie of the Year, they're not getting the same treatment. This is not a guy that's getting a lot of fanfare on like blowout forums where Corbin Carroll's got like, you know, he's going to be on that first page. A lot of people are collecting his stuff, buying his stuff. They have high expectations for the dude. And I love the guy. Like, I think his mental makeup's great. I think he's a great teammate. I think he's very mature for his age. And he can do it all, except for the defense, like Scott mentioned, doesn't have the arm. That's never going to come, right? He was in the MVP race in the first half last year. He was up there with Acuna. He was right up there in Vegas odds, you know. Maybe not completely next to Acuna in Vegas odds, because that'll take into account like what they're projected to do for the rest of the season. But he had the numbers. He was there, right up there with him. Gunnar was not. A lot of people remember that for Carroll. And with Gunnar, again, like similar situation with Bobby Witt. He's just cheaper right now. He's probably, what is he, like 60% the cost? Is he 70% the cost? This is a guy that could put it into another gear. If you look at him versus other elite young third basemen in the game, like Austin Riley and Rafael Devers, he can't hit like them yet. But what if he does? What if he takes that step forward? We saw from the first half to the second half. First half, he had like a 30% strikeout rate, 20% walk rate. And then he got a lot more aggressive in the second half. So the strikeout rate went down. So did the walk rate. What if there's like another version of Gunnar Henderson where everybody is tapped into Jackson Holiday this year and they think that Gunnar is going to be overshadowed? What if he puts together a season where he has comparable hitting stats to a Rafael Devers, which he's capable of, in my opinion? Batting average would need to go up a bunch to do that. He's got 85 percentile sprint speed, so it's not like 98 or 99% like Carroll, fastest guy in the league 2 years ago, actually. And he has the ability to play an above average defensive position. I know Austin Riley did last year for probably the first time, or he's getting better. So maybe that sticks too. But Gunnar Henderson could be better than both of them, and he could be a dark horse MVP candidate. And for that reason, I'm taking Gunnar.
Are you on the Blue Wave PSA 10 that ends in an hour and 23 minutes, Phil?
Yep, I got a snipe set.
Do you? It's gonna.
Yeah, I do.
This is going to end before it ends. So, what's your snipe set at? You feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, I think it's around like 940 or something. So with him, you got to watch out for his base Bowman Chrome Auto, because he's got, I think, like 400 plus PSA 10s, which is way higher than usual. So like Corbin Carroll probably has like 100. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, Gunnar's was easy to grade or something. So be careful about the base. I'm paying up for the color, even if it is like a manufactured color. Chris is probably shaking his head.
I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those situations for me, right? I remember when Soto and Acuna came up, you just gravitate towards specific players. So I remember I picked Soto. I don't know why, but I always picked him. I liked his game. I liked what he did. And that's kind of how I feel about Corbin Carroll. I would not be shocked if actually Gunnar Henderson turned out to be the better player long term, but there's something about Corbin Carroll I really like in his offensive profile. He has opposite field pop, and he's tiny. He's 5'10", not tiny, right? But like 5'10" for a baseball player, 165 pounds is pretty small, able to have that pop. But the one thing that does worry me truly is that shoulder. This was his exact quote the day after. I took a swing and I felt a shift in my shoulder. Shocking, tingling sensation go down my arm, and then my hand went numb. I was just holding it, thinking it came out of the socket. Pretty much thought that the season was over. That's pretty crazy of a quote for a player to say. And that can happen again. It's happened to Tatis a couple of years back, where it kind of kept having weird shoulder injuries till he got it fixed, and other players. So that's,
and he's got that one-handed backswing. And if like Tatis and some others can go away from that and still hit for power, still hit opposite field power. Like if Carroll goes away from that swing, that approach, we're talking like 10-20% reduction in power, maybe, to preserve that shoulder. Then, of course, all that other stuff that can go with having a bad shoulder.
But I will say WAR is going to love Gunnar Henderson. And I think like this last year, Gunnar Henderson had a 6.2 WAR, and he did not have that great of an offensive season. There's a chance he's an 8.5 WAR player next year. And that's when Phil's talking about the dark horse MVP. If other people have a slow year because the AL is a little bit softer with Ohtani gone, there is a path for him, which is kind of crazy to think about. Ty, what do you think?
125 OPS plus, right? Gunner
125 OPS plus with an 814 OPS. Yes. So like league offense was down, but you're gonna have a hard time winning the MVP of the 125 OPS plus in today's MLB.
Correct.
Where Corbin Carroll was at 134, you can, if Gunnar Henderson had an 868 OPS like Corbin Carroll last year, he'd have been a 7.5 WAR player, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Teapot, do you have any thoughts? I was going to say something, but I'll let you go first.
I really like both of these guys. And I think the point about rookie cards coming down, a year after is a really good point, a really important point. I think that happens a lot where there's a lot of hype baked into people. And then was that you, Phil, who said like, unless they just really take it up another level, which, maybe either of these guys is capable of doing. But I think between the two, it is Henderson. Just because the baseline in terms of WAR is there with his defense. Unless they do that from a card perspective, it would make me a little bit nervous for the short term. I was trying to think of or look at other players who, improve their batting average. Like you were talking about them getting up into the level of Devers or somebody like that. Going back to Nolan Arenado, who has a similar build to Gunnar Henderson. He's an inch shorter. Obviously otherworldly defense, but his rookie year, Arenado hit 267 and then he jumped up to 287 and increased the power from 10 to 18 home runs. And then he just took off at age 24 with 42 homers and same 287 average. So his OPS plus, I think you mentioned it was 124 earlier, but that's what I'd be interested to see, or I'd want to see if there's going to be any hope of him, taking another step with his card prices. Otherwise, I think almost feel like best case scenario is to hold flat this year if he just puts up another really solid campaign. But I mean, both of these guys were in the MVP voting conversation last year. Both of them, like you said, won Rookie of the Year. And I do think there's a good chance that Henderson could be the one still commanding or deserving to command the spotlight for the Orioles, even after Holiday comes up, or no matter what Adley Rutschman or others do.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I will also say, Chris, I want to hear your thoughts, but if I had to pick between the four players we discussed now, I would actually take both of these guys over Bobby Witt myself, based off of the pricing where they're at and based off of upside and potential. So I would actually still go Julio number one, then these two, and then Witt. To me, that's my opinion. What's your thoughts, Chris?
I was just going to say, I think we all sort of are kind of in agreement on Gunnar Henderson, but and Phil is going to try to snipe this Bowman Chrome auto. These guys they're both in the Carroll and Gunnar are in this 2023 rookie class, and the number of sets is just outrageous that's getting produced. I did Jeff and I did a Blabbin show about Michael Harris, and he's got 2,200 gold refractors, not counting any inserts or anything like that. And that's so far. And Gold Minted hadn't come out yet, and Stadium Club Chrome hasn't come out yet, and Allen and Ginter hasn't come out yet, or Chrome hasn't come out yet. So that number is going to climb. So if you did want to buy a Gunnar Henderson card, are you guys strictly looking at the Bowman Chrome autos? Because that rookie, the amount of rookies to me it's either Topps Black or I almost just walk away because there's so many Chrome cards.
Like we said, I'm still kind of attracted to Topps Chrome autographs in general, true Topps Chrome, and he should have. I believe he has one of those. I'm not as in touch with his cards, but basically, if I was spending big money, I would definitely go with the Bowman Chrome autograph, especially because they aren't that expensive in comparison to other big baseball players. They're still expensive, talking $1,000, $2,000, but they're not that expensive. It feels silly going to a card that's 75% of the value. 75% of the cost, but there's so many different options where the Bowman Chrome autograph is the Bowman Chrome autograph. So for me, it's not even a hard decision.
Gotcha.
Yeah, one of the things I notice when the rookie sets are fairly new and recent, they've only been out in the market, the singles have only been out there for 3 or 6 months. There's just not a whole lot of singles yet, and people are paying up because it's the new product. They're collecting the rainbows. They just want to collect singles of their favorite players on eBay. What happens, and this is what's happened to me with another player from 2023, maybe we'll talk about him in a future episode, but I just can't. I'm getting out tonight by 2 to 3x the amount.
Yeah,
because I'm there's no way I'm paying that much for his Topps Chrome update sticker auto orange wave if his Bowman Chrome auto first number to 499 goes for less. It makes no sense. So you just have to be careful. There's still deals to be had, and eventually it does even out. And maybe with Topps Chrome parallels, you're at a place now where you're literally paying fair market value, and the hype's gone enough off that set. Enough's been open at this point with the MVP buyback program. But yeah, for me with Gunner, it's got to be some sort of cool orange color match auto type thing going on card. True color or Bowman Chrome auto for sure.
I want to bounce off of that, Phil. So Bryce Harper is an interesting person to compare in regards to rookie autographs and Bowman Chrome autographs. Bryce Harper's weird because his first Bowman is actually a USA card, and his Bowman Chrome autograph people go for doesn't have that first logo because of it. But his rookie cards don't go for nearly as much. Even like the tops or Bowman Sterling rookie gold autograph was going for like $1,000, right? It was not expensive, while his Bowman Chrome autographs are like $15,000 to $20,000, and that separates over time. Especially, I don't think we understand how inexpensive some of these cards are going to be not that long in the future. I don't think we understand it yet. But some of these cards, you're gonna be like, man, I picked up a gold flagship for $35 of an all-star Gunnar Henderson in 10. I don't know. I'm just saying there's real potential of that happening. So for me, there's no other option, unfortunately. People will disagree with me, and that's totally cool. Collect what you love. But that's just how I'm feeling, whether it's true or not.
Chris did something on Blabbing About Slabbing with Jeff about like ranking the top. What's the hierarchy of Michael Harris gold rookie refractors? Like not even counting autographs. Right. And you're forced to start to discount some of what would be on the top based on images. Right. So like it's not even as simple as, so if you start to discount like the true Topps Chrome card because you don't like it for whatever reason, then you maybe that card doesn't even hold its own, you know, because it gets lost in the sea of other Topps Chrome and Chrome gold refractors.
Yeah, for Michael Harris, we actually took the Topps Black, which is, I would say, with all these Chrome sets coming out, I feel like the Topps Black card belongs on a tier to its own. But for Michael Harris, we just threw it out because it's an image that Topps changed before Topps Chrome. So they have this Michael Harris image in Topps where he's diving for a ball he doesn't catch. And then they realized that image stinks and they changed it for Chrome. So we only see it in flagship, and there's very little gold around the outside. And I just, Braves fans that I talk to, like normally that's a card they would want. And they're just like, no, they're not interested in it because the image stinks. The parallel doesn't look great. So they're going for golds. That's why we're trying to rank those gold cards in some sort of order. But there's just so many. We could do it for Gunner too, but it starts to really get tough in terms of his rookies.
Ty, what are you sharing? This is interesting.
So this is just comparing all four of these guys, Bowman Chrome autos, their first autos in PSA 10, and comparing their prices. So it looks like we've got Corbin most recently at 1.3K, although his 30-day average is hovering a little over 1,000, and then J-Rod pretty consistently right around 1.2, 1.25K. So those two guys are kind of neck and neck in price. And then we shift down to Witt at $787. And then we've got Gunnar Henderson at $700. So when I'm looking at this, the pop is about double for Henderson at $364, what it is for Witt and Carroll. And then J-Rod's sort of situated in there at $242. But just looking at these prices, this to me makes an even more, I think makes an even more compelling case for Henderson. But
how quickly can you get like blue or gold on here?
I'll stop sharing and just pull it up. You guys can keep talking. You can probably pull it up.
Yeah. So it's interesting though. Gunner, the hardest part about talking about players this age, he could just not be good. Remember Jason Hayward? Chris, you know Jason Hayward. He was so good his rookie year. He's never been close. No. And that's one thing. We could all look like complete idiots in 6 months. But at the same time, like scouts love him. Great minor league numbers. He looked great this year. I feel like I don't want to say he's a good buy because again of the rookie issues that we're discussing, but he seems like a decent buy.
Yeah, there's always, anytime you're convinced a 23-year-old is who you should dump 4 or 5 figures into, always go look at Chris Bryant. Always.
Yes, that's a great example as a Rockies fan. Great example. Rookie
of the Year, MVP, World Series, to the moon. And he's not on the moon.
No, he's in Colorado. It's pretty sad. Oh, that's horrible. That's like a 2-sentence horror story. He's not on the moon. He's in Colorado. All right. But yeah, so I don't want to go too long on this. So Ty, when you have that, let's look at it. But I do want to propose the next question to you. We have one more. We do want to discuss Stadium Club Bowman's Best really fast. Let's keep this one pretty short. But who would you pick between Elly De La Cruz and Evan Carter? They're both rookies in Top Series 1, both extremely different. We've kind of already talked about them last episode. We did this already, but I want to just kind of chat about it one more time. Just what's your thoughts? Phil, you were thinking. I can see it. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so short term for me, it's in Evan Carter's a guy that I like. I like the plate discipline. On base percentages off the charts. He's already shown in major league at bats like a decent sample size at this point. If you include playoffs, like he can compete at the major league level. There's a little bit of power there too. Will he steal 30 bases ever on the Rangers? They don't tend to run a whole lot. You've got guys like top 10% in the league in sprint speed. He might not ever get to 30 based on just those tendencies. Could he get to 2020? Sure. Is that going to be enough for the hobby to pay attention and notice? I don't know. I think Elly is a guy that a lot of people have written off. He's selling way below his all-time highs at this point, if that matters to you. I think you can get like a PSA 10 Bowman Chrome Auto Refractor number to $499 for around like $1,300, $1,200 right now. This is not Luis Robert. This is not a guy that's, and by that I mean like he hasn't received 4 or 5 chances and blown them yet. This is the guy that, yes, he really fell off in the last 2 or 3 months of the season. Strikeouts, chase balls outside the zone, and he's got a ground ball issue. But at this point, like, I don't think the sample size of ground balls is enough to worry me. This is a guy that can make contact with high fastballs. So if he learns to just look for it high and lay off, the ones that are in the dirt, easier said than done, right? But this is a guy that's completely electric. We talked about J-Rod having the it factor. Elly has a lot of those same attributes. In some ways, even more impressive, right?
Yes,
like max exit velo versus J-Rod, way better, right? Sprint speed versus J-Rod, a little bit faster, right? Got to give J-Rod some
player in baseball.
Came into the league with 99 percentile. They all do. All the guys coming in the league are 99 or 100. Carroll was, and then Witt, and then Elly. This is a guy that's capable of a lot. I wouldn't write him off yet. He had better minor league stats than Oneil Cruz. A lot of people tend to compare the two. And he's proven to be more durable than Oneil Cruz by a lot at this point. I'm excited to see what he has in store, but if I was to like provide a floor for like their careers, I think Evan Carter has a higher floor. I just think Elly has a much higher ceiling and just a big variance in outcomes.
It's kind of hard to think. One thing I didn't realize, Evan Carter's younger than Elly De La Cruz by a year. So that's kind of crazy thing about it. He had his age 20 season last year. He had that great of plate discipline, won a World Series. This is World Series winner Evan Carter. But Elly does have like the biggest hit factor we've seen in a long time. Like Ohtani obviously was bigger because he's a Shohei Ohtani coming in from Japan, having that skill, win Rookie of the Year. But I think there is a real world where Elly De La Cruz is a top 5 player in baseball for a few years. I think there's a very real world. I can't say the same about Evan Carter. To be honest, I didn't watch many Rangers games outside of the postseason, but Evan Carter's the safe bet. But if you want to go very high risk, high reward, I think Elly's your guy. So, Chris, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think Phil pretty much nailed it. The Evan Carter is the safest, but Elly De La Cruz has the most like potential, I suppose. I mean, Evan Cruz was to see that kind of calmness in the World Series and the ALCS. I mean, that catch he made in Houston was phenomenal. His at-bats, like he did not look scared. He didn't look overwhelmed. I mean, he looks like he has all the tools to be a fantastic hitter. But Elly De La Cruz has all the tools to be like, a superhuman baseball player. He's got the hardest throw on the infield, I think, already. I think he threw a ball from shortstop at like 99 miles an hour. I really would not want to catch that if I were first baseman because it's probably coming out of my feet. But I mean, he's electric, like you guys said. We're going to see way more highlights, assuming health. We'll see way more Elly De La Cruz highlights on, ESPN doesn't show baseball anymore, but on the MLB Network, then we will see Evan Carter highlights. But Evan Carter is probably the guy that I would be more inclined to invest money in.
He's cheaper He's not expensive. Like obviously it's a gold wave, so it is what it is. But it's $1,000 right now for a gold wave out of 50 Evan Carter Bowman Chrome Auto. Yeah, it's raw, but like you can get some deals. I'm assuming it's even better in auction. I haven't looked at sold listings, but he is significantly cheaper still.
Cheaper is good.
Cheaper is good. Ty, do you have any thoughts on it?
Not a ton, other than I thought Bill's closing sentence was the most accurate, like Chris said, just floor versus ceiling. But Ellie's got a much cooler name, so I'm going to go with him. Evan Carter's just a boring name. He's not going anywhere with his cards.
That is true. We can't argue that. Ellie De La Cruz has way more like style to it than Evan Carter.
Evan Carter was in my math class. Like that's what it was like. O'Neal Cruz was not.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
He was either in your math class or he was in sync. I'm not sure which one it is.
I actually had that exact thought. Like I think I went to school with an Evan Carter.
So that's his actual Bowman Chrome autograph went for $1,400. Evan Carter's on auction. That was probably shilled. Not many sold listings since. But all right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Let us know in the comments how stupid we are for our takes. Just know we did not prepare these takes, and they are all takes, and we can change them tomorrow. But other than that, thank you for watching. Let us know what you think, and we will see you in the next video.